This all aircraft information, Delta current.
Good morning, everyone in the room. How are we doing? All right. Sunday morning, Flight Sim Expo. Anyone out for a bit of a late night last night, perhaps? Mine was a little bit late down at the hotel bar. So we're just kind of getting everything going here first thing on a Sunday morning. Give people in the room a couple more minutes to filter in. And I think they're just wrapping all of the tech testing up on this morning's live ATC demo flight. Welcome to our online audience. You may be watching with us on Flight Sim Expo. We're also live on the Fly-by-Wire YouTube channel. Got a great audience online watching from probably around the world. So welcome to those of you online to Flight Sim Expo 2023. So show of hands here in the room, how many of us are already flying on Vatsim? How many have tried Vatsim or IVEO or Pilot Edge, something similar? How many have never flown online before? Nice, they're about half and half. Well, welcome, especially to those of you who've never flown online before. If you would just shout out or just say some of the reasons why you've maybe not wanted to try flying online. Intimidating? Yeah? Still trying to learn to fly the plane? Haven't gotten my audio to work? Yeah, that's been a theme of this year's conference, I think. What else? Any other things? Schedules, sometimes people can't maybe get online when ATC is online. That's one I hear pretty regularly. Maybe you flew online once, had a bad experience. Anyone else? Covered a lot of them. Sorry? Procedures. You're learning the procedures, not familiar with the procedures. Nice. That sound pretty familiar to you? Yeah. So those will be some of the things that we're trying to help you overcome today with this demonstration flight. The purpose of today's demo is basically to give you two things. Number one, it's the Fly-by-Wire team. So this is the team that's produced a totally free A321 mod for Microsoft Flight Simulator. And it's just an absolutely free and fantastic add-on developed open source by the community. So you're going to see them flying that. And then you're also going to see the air traffic control side. So along with Fly-by-Wire, we have Vatsim here. This is Brandon from VAT USA, who will basically be walking you through. So while they're doing the flying over there, over here, we're going to have live commentary talking about how it's all working. So they're going to explain a little bit more about how that all works. They're going to explain the flight plan, the route, and all those details. So I think you guys are pretty much ready to go?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So if you guys want to go mics on, if we're all good in the back then, and you guys are ready to fly? Okay, he's just going to do a radio check, he says. And we've got, basically everything's happening here. So these guys are doing some flying. The controllers, they're all here as well, Brandon. So they're upstairs in the Vatsim display area. So if you guys haven't been upstairs yet, they're in that like boardroom that looks like a control tower. You get a nice view of the airport, and then they're actually there. So all of the ATC is being done from right here at Flight Sim Expo in Houston in another room. We didn't want to do literally everything in this room. Otherwise, they would have no way of being able to hear everybody. But if you guys do want to see that later on once we're done, that was something you can do for sure. How are we sounding over there, guys?
He's going to do it right now.
Okay.
Calling Houston Tower 5x5.
We might need a minute or two to get that working out. So we'll give things just another moment here, get all the tech squared away, and then we'll be back with you to showcase exactly what Vatsim and live ATC flying is all about. So we'll be back with you in just a couple minutes. Brandon, while we're waiting for that, anything you want to say quickly about VAT USA, maybe your Flight Sim Expo experience, what you've been doing here over the past couple days?
Yeah, well, my name is Brandon Wenning, as he was introduced, and this is actually my first Flight Sim Expo,
Nice.
so I'm glad to be here. And it was interesting to see the room, right? We had about 50-50 on who is doing Flight Sim on Vatsim right now and who isn't, and it was great to hear some of your comments. We're really encouraging to get new members. We want you to enjoy and to really become a part of a community. Hopefully throughout this experience and then getting to go up and see our war room, that it's just people who are the controllers on the other side. Just like you guys, it's the same type of people who are over there. We're controlling, we're trying to make it a realistic environment, but we're all here to have fun. So it's super exciting for you guys to be here, to get to experience this live hand. And, obviously I'll welcome questions to try and
For sure.
Ease any worries, but super excited to get to show you this presentation and walk you through what a flight on Vatsim really entails and ease some of those first-time jitters.
And where are we flying today? I know you're going to say it again, but...
Yeah, we're going from Intercon, Houston, right in here, and we're going over to Austin. So it'll be a short little hop all within the Houston airspace, so trying to keep it local and talk about some procedures that some of you might be familiar with if you're from the area.
Nice. And I know a lot of people, we were just talking with Tom in the back of the room there about Vatsim. We're obviously demonstrating an airliner here. That does tend to be what we see a lot of on Vatsim. But what about general aviation, helicopters, seaplanes? Is all that stuff something that we can do?
Yeah, we have it all, and it's quite honestly refreshing to see the wide variety of simmers that come onto Vatsim. If you're looking to fly a 172 around your home airport and just want to take the grand tour, we welcome that, as well as the long-haul airliners that'll go all the way across the pond. So we are super excited as controllers to get to see that, work VFR targets, helicopters, we do it all. So whatever you're interested in that day, we'll make it happen.
Yeah, I'm a controller on Vatsim myself. Some of you guys may know I work in the Boston area. If you've flown through Boston Center, you may have heard my voice. I'll be with you on the chat as well for the online event. So if you guys have questions, you want to throw them in the chat, whether you're watching on our website, watching on YouTube, I'll be there with you in the chat to help answer some of those questions as we go and feed those questions into the room as well. It looks like they're still working on a couple things over there. Yeah, we'll get that kind of finished up. Looks like we're getting close anyway. This is one of the fun things about running this event. We were here last night. We moved all this stuff over from the fly-by-wire booth. Of course, everything last night works. Then you show up this morning, nothing has changed, and then nothing works. And you're just like, come on. Which is, pretty much par for the course in Flight Sim as well. Like, how many times you shut down the sim at the end of the day, and then the next morning something is updated, and you're like, oh, why isn't this working again? This is probably not as much of a Vatsim tech thing as it is just get the room started out, because we have so many different audio sources. So that's what they're working on. Question from the audience? Yeah. Yeah, we can. The question was whether we can dim the lights. Yes, I think we can probably make it a little bit dimmer in here. There's a switch just back there that we can probably use once we get going. Let's see how that looks. That helped a little bit, maybe.
I just want to check, is the audio from the game on? I know. You should be hearing something.
Because we should be, I think you're saying we should be able to hear the background noise from the airplane, right? Yeah. We should hear it in the room here.
You hear it up there?
So maybe we'll get, are you guys able to help working? Oh, we need you guys to talk, it sounds
Keep
like.
talking? Yeah, we can keep talking, but the game audio should come in. That's not coming in, it seems. You want to talk?
Yeah. You want me to speak now? I have the mic on, right? Yeah. Okay.
I guess that, yeah, keep talking.
Yeah, keep talking.
There you go.
Test. All right. Yeah, I'm gonna keep talking. Yeah, I was trying to do a radio check, but I couldn't hear them through the headset. I could hear the sim audio, so I don't know.
It's always something, exactly.
Yeah, I'm not really sure.
And so, Brandon, where do you work on Vatsim? When you're controlling, when you're not being the actual VAT USA person, where do you control on Vatsim?
Yeah, I control a lot of different locations. Some of my favorite are Indianapolis, Houston, and Denver. Those
Nice.
are my 3 top favorites.
Nice. And then within the sort of Vatsim network, in addition to being a controller, you're also part of the admin staff. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, so we have organizations in Vatsim that kind of from a top tier down level, we try to organize our airspace. Much like in the real world, we want to make sure that we're serving the pilots the best we can. We're taking care of training controllers, so we're providing the best services. So we have what's called a division, and that's the United States division, and I'm the deputy division director for the United States division. So I'm overall 22 of our Arctics, and just to expand upon that just a little bit, it's what we would think of as the centers, or our en route centers. There's 22 different locations all around the country, and they're providing the services when air traffic control on the ground or on radar are not providing it. So think very big picture, and that's how we divide up air traffic controllers on Vatsim. We want to assign them to that area, get them enough airports that they can actually go through, and get different experiences on. Like you'll see here in Houston today, we have both the Houston Hobby and the Houston Intercontinental, but we also have Austin, San Antonio, New Orleans, and many others around the area, and that's all under the Houston Arctic. So some of the controllers you'll hear from today are a part of that organization, and my job is basically to oversee the managers of each of those 22 facilities in the United States and make sure that, again, we're serving the pilots the best we can. We're keeping everything in line and by the books for our air traffic controllers. So it's quite an honestly, it's a great position because I love getting to interact with the community because we have over multiple thousand controllers in our division. So it's absolutely fantastic to get to serve over the 7,000 pilots that show up on Vatsim every day.
Yeah, question from Dave?
Yeah, so question about the equipment suffix.
Yeah.
And what type of approach you're going to get. Do you prefer an equipment suffix that's appropriate for the plane type, or if you just want to guarantee just a straight old ILS approach with vectors to give it a different equipment suffix? Or?
Nice nuanced question there. So I'll give you the chance to talk about that because that's a bit of there's a lot of depth actually to that you may not know about. But just for the stream, the question was about filing equipment information. So an equipment suffix in an FAA flight plan or for an ICAO flight plan, filing your aircraft capability in terms of navigation. What do we as controllers prefer? And even what do we see as controllers?
Yeah, my honest answer, and this is just more of my opinion, I would love to see the equipment suffix of what the plane can do. And then any remarks that you have, there's a remarks section in your flight plan. And us controllers will look at that and read that. So if you're saying, no SIDS or no stars, you don't have those procedures, then we'll try and work with you to make that happen. And the same thing as if you're requesting, ILS approach 18 right because I want to try it out, then we'll try and make that happen too. Sometimes we can't always accommodate, sometimes we'll have to put different procedures and whatnot just based on the traffic load, but the equipment suffix is really telling us what that plane's navigational capabilities are because there are certain types of navigation that you can't do. For instance, if you don't have a GPS, we'll assign routes that don't include GPS points. You should be able to dead reckon just based on VOR, old school navigation, so to speak. But if you put a aircraft suffix that has the GPS in it, then it assigns different routes. We have much different possibilities. So it really is ultimately not about the approach so much, but about the entire navigation. What can we assign? How can we get you there the quickest? Yeah. Yes? Yeah, that's a great question. So the question was, if you are a center controller in the Houston Arctic, are you controlling the tower below and can you control all those other positions? And the answer is yes. So Vatsim operates not like the FAA because we don't have hundreds of controllers that we can populate at every hour of the day. So when we provide services online, we do it in a top-down fashion. So today you'll see right now, it might be different, but I believe we have a tower, an approach, and a center on right now. Now, some of you might be familiar with how the positions work, and you know that you might start out at clearance delivery and then move to ground and then to tower, but you'll see that we don't have those positions currently staffed right now. So those responsibilities roll up to the Houston tower position. So tower will be in charge of the clearance delivery, the ground, and the takeoff, and then it will go up to approach and then to center. So you have to think about each tower, is it staffed, is it not? If it's not, it goes up to that next available position. So if someone was to hop onto Austin approach right now and there was nothing else below it, they would control their position and everything below. And that's just to make sure that we optimize the ATC services available to all our pilots. That way we're not saying, line up for the ILS and then good luck. We want to make sure we get you safely to the ground and make the experience best for you. And it's also a fun challenge for controllers, in a combination setting because that's not something that's done real world. But then again, we don't have the same traffic levels either. So hopefully that answers your question. And
that just gonna add on to that because that was one of the things that people always ask me is like, which controller do I contact? And that's one of the things on Vatsim that is different than real world flying where you don't always have ground frequencies staffed. And so it's very easy when you're at Houston and you see a tower and you go, okay, well there's no ground, I'm going to call the tower. It's a little bit harder when you're at an airport like Ellington and you're going, okay, well who am I going to talk to, right? It would be weird to get in real life a taxi clearance from Houston Center here at Ellington Field, but that is actually how we operate on Vatsim. So if you're ever unsure, what we always recommend is just pick the frequency that you think might be a good guess, call them up, tell them where you are, and if it's the wrong frequency, we'll give you the correct one. What is very helpful in that instruction is if you call us and say where you actually are. So it's, whatever call sign on the ground at Ellington Field requesting this. Now I know where you are. Sometimes people will call up and they're like, November 345, ready for taxi. I'm like, dude, I have like 300 airports. I'm going to need a little more detail, and then I can help you out, right? And where we are in Boston, we overlie a lot of New York approach. So there's a lot of airports that look like they're physically within Boston Center, but they're actually New York airports. Airports like Stewart or Long Island. We'll get calls at Boston Center all the time for those airports. And usually we can hear them, but sometimes we can't. And so that's another one where it's like, yeah, we'll figure out the right New York approach frequency for you. Even on our side, sometimes New York is one of the most complicated airspaces. And so sometimes as controllers too, we're like, well, I think it's that one. I'll try and see if he wants it. No, he doesn't want it. Okay, it's probably this one. So we have that same problem as well. Was there another question there on the floor? I think I saw. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Pilot calling Houston Tower, got you 5x5.
So the question was for frequency changes, how do you actually dial those in, Brandon?
Yeah, so most of the software actually will, the planes will connect to our vPilot software, which is basically our connection client to the Vatsim network. So you can just turn the dial in your plane just like normal, and it will then connect into this box, which is what you're seeing right here, and this is the Vatsim connection pilot. And you'll see up here, COM1, or they had it up there, COM1 and COM2 is the exact same current active frequencies you have listed on there. So not only are you able to set it in your plane, you're able to mix between COM1 and COM2, and if you're receiving both, you will be able to hear both frequencies, but you can only talk on one at once. So it's a nice feature to be able to add some realism to it, that you don't have to worry about doing it in two separate places.
So it looks like they're just about ready to go, which is the good news. For those who are just joining us, this is our live ATC demo flight with fly-by-wire and with Vatsim. We're focusing on the Vatsim network just because they're here, but they are one of only a couple different networks who do this. There's also Pilot Edge, IVAO, and a couple of others that are multiplayer based. IVAO is also here with us at the show. We just happen to be using Vatsim today, but just remember that's one of a few different options. Sounds like that's working, so that's good news, that you might use for online air traffic control. And just at a very high level, one of the important things to talk about here is that this app that you can see, this one right here, which they're going to talk about more, is called vPilot. This app runs separately from your simulator, so you don't have to start a flight on Vatsim and end the flight on Vatsim. You're really just starting a regular flight, just like any other day that you might be in the simulator. Then you open up this separate program, and that's how you connect to the network. That's what injects all the other pilots who are also flying on Vatsim into your simulator, and that's how you communicate with air traffic control. So if halfway through your flight, you decide, you know what, I don't want to be on Vatsim anymore, all you have to do is click that disconnect button or the X at the top of the window. That goes away, and now you're off Vatsim. So many people will sometimes use multiple networks. You might start a flight on Pilot Edge because their coverage area happens to be in California. That's where you're starting your flight. And then you're flying to New York, where Pilot Edge never has coverage. So you might then close the Pilot Edge version of this app and then open the Vatsim version and connect to that network. So your flight can be happening the whole time, and you can choose which part of that is online if that's helpful. We'll take one more question, it looks like, so go ahead, Jer.
Remember 241 Juliet Alpha.
Question. So the question was if you're going to disconnect or if you're going to be swishing between networks,
what's your
should you let the
direction of your
controllers know?
departure today?
Maybe a bit of a personal preference thing, Brandon. What do you think?
I think so too. You know, when I've had pilots commonly in the middle of a flight just give me a quick message. They said, hey, dinner's ready. I'm disconnecting.
Number 1 Juliet Alpha, are you headed down to Hobby?
And I say, no problem, no complaints about getting off for some good food, so go ahead and disconnect. And that's it. There's nothing to it. You guys are totally in the
correction. We're heading down to Kilo Hotel.
You can totally do that anytime. If you're going to let the controllers know if it's busy. It might help us out with some separation, but typically I don't require any notice.
Yeah, some of the funny ones, you know, we have people that fly on Vatsim of all ages, so there's as young as 13, I think, can be allowed on the network, and of course, as old as people can figure out the technology, there's no limitations, there's no medical requirements, right? And so it's really funny sometimes when you'll hear in the background of someone's transmission, especially if they're a bit younger, you can hear like, get down here for dinner, and the pilot goes, yeah, I'm sorry, I've got to disconnect. So that has definitely happened before. Philippe, how are we doing? You ready to go? All right, so I'll hand things over to you guys. Like I said, I'll be with you in the chat. I'll be here to help out with questions from the floor, but I'll hand things over to Fly-by-Wire and Vatsim to kick us off. Thanks, both of you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we're going to lower this audio from us speaking a little bit so that we can hear Vatsim ATC during the speakers as well, because there's audio balancing, stuff like that. So we're going to ask for the audience to not ask questions during the flight. We'll do a question and answer at the end. Making it a bit easier, so I hope from the audio team this is okay to lower us and lower them, or increase them a little bit. Then maybe we can do a radio check, see what happens. Hoping they respond.
Houston calling, or pilot calling Houston Tower, I got you 5 by 5.
That's you. That's not, I can hear this perfectly fine. If they point us, yeah. We can point this maybe a little bit more to you. There. Anyway, let's get started, right? So I think Will and Boris are going to be setting up the plane. We have started the aircraft into a powered on state, but we haven't loaded anything of flight plans into it. We haven't loaded anything of passengers into
Houston
it.
Tower, November 241, also Trade, Texas.
So that's another
Number
call on.
241 Juliet Alpha, runway 15 left, taxi via Echo Bravo, November Echo, Whiskey.
So yeah, I would suggest, guys, you start setting up the aircraft. We'll start talking what you guys are doing. We're ready to go, and hopefully this is going to be fun for you. So maybe just a quick introduction. I am part of Fly-by-Wire. I'm
Number 1 Juliet
helping out
Alpha,
in the
that's runway
community. We're an
15
open
left,
source
taxi
community, so we
via
develop airplanes for free. The
Echo Bravo,
the A320
November Bravo,
Neo that we're showing here is
November
completely
Echo,
free. That you can download at any time. And so we're setting up the aircraft right now. So first of all, we're going to be loading stuff from SimBrief. So we build the flight plan using SimBrief, if you know that tool. And so then we're going to load that in. I don't know if you're actually loaded the flight plan yet. Did you init the flight plan?
We're just getting
Okay. So yeah, they're setting up the flight plan and the MCDU, so the main central computer of the aircraft, making sure that everything works as expected. And yeah, I think, look at that. So it's a simple click and everything gets pulled from SimBrief. And the flight plan will be loaded as well if you go to the flight plan page at some point. But I'll let them do their job here, right? Because it's a very simple flight plan, given we're flying about 30 minutes, so it's not that long of a flight. Well, we're good on time. That's good. We're going to make it.
Yes, we will.
We can dim the lights a little bit, if possible. That would be good. Thank you. Yeah, because with the lights, it gets a little bit harder to see, I guess. Oh. Everybody's very happy now.
Yes.
So we're looking into the ATIS information. So ATIS is the weather information that we have. Well, that's online available, both from Vatsim and online tools. And so it's going to tell us that we need to set up a baro setting, which defines your pressure at your altitude so that it knows you're at basically ground level and so on. Yeah, I don't know, Brandon, if you want to add stuff. It's, we're here to talk about stuff that's happening, really, but also up to you. Oh, he's also showing the printer. Now, how nice is that?
There you go.
A little bit movement with the mouse, but we'll figure it out. There's a lot happening at once. So there's your printer. So you get a piece of paper that shows you the information. It's easy as a reference, right? You need this information while you're programming the MCDU. And so having it shown on the MCDU and then having to go and program it, it's very confusing. So they allow you to print this in the real aircraft. And you can put it and read from it while you're inputting stuff. The other thing here is that this is our electronic flight back, something that the standard Asobo does not have. So we're connecting the JetBridge now. You can control some of the services. We should make sure the fuel is loaded at some point. And we can get cargo trucks in, we can get food trucks in, and so on. And then we can start loading the aircraft with passengers. So there's a few tabs on the top, as you can see: fuel, payload, and pushback. Fuel is going to allow us to set an amount of fuel that we also get from SimBrief loaded. We're going to do this fast now, so it's not going to be real time, but you will see the number go up while the virtual fuel truck is loading. Now, if you're familiar with JSX Pro, we have integration with that. So you can enable it. We don't do this in the sim here because it's adding more and more stuff on top and it slows stuff a little bit down because they're trying to be very realistic. So then we have to wait on the fuel truck. We have to wait for the fuel to be loaded in a real-time kind of situation. So we're like, you know what, we're going to do this faster because we don't want you guys to be looking for half an hour at a passenger loading one by one. I guess most of you have flown here. Most of you know how it goes when you're getting into an aircraft. So this is a little bit faster than what the reality would be. In the meantime, I guess that, while this is going on in the background, people can start working on, or the pilots can start working on some other configurations. And you'll see that all this information is relevant because at some point we're going to start filling in like fuel weights and zero fuel gravity center and so on. That is really important for the aircraft autopilot to figure out where's my load balance, where's the balance of my weight, my fuel. Do I have to adjust my trim settings automatically to make sure that I fly level? Things like that are really important. Yeah, so this is what we're doing right now.
And one thing that's really important to note is checking the ATIS here. So you might just get in the habit of checking the wind and kind of assume the runways. And that's definitely what you can do when there's not a controller online. But typically when we have Vatsim controllers online, we will post the ATIS, which is where this is grabbed from. And that will tell you what runways we are currently landing and departing, just in case it doesn't match the winds correctly. You guys can prepare for runways you can either be expecting to land at your destination airport or be taking off from. So you could have saw in that they're saying they are departing 15 left and 15 right today. And I believe the wind was about 240 in single digits. So nothing too strenuous. And that's just because we operate by standard operating procedures for which flow we'll use for our airports. So there's a lot that goes into it in air traffic control. It's not just which runway has the best wind, because we have more than just one flight that we're typically dealing with at a time. And we have to make sure that we're taking everybody into consideration for both arrivals and departures.
Yeah, so here you can actually see that we also have an integration with Vatsim on the EFB. You can manage your frequencies, so you know that right now tower is online, which we're going to use to ask for clearance soon. You have approach available for once we depart, I guess, although it is approach. And we have Houston Central online, which is covering the whole Houston area and beyond, of course. So that means that we can switch frequencies during the flight using the electronic flight back. And I think once the passengers have loaded, we can start asking for clearance. By the way, Will, if you want to jump to Navigraph, so Navigraph is loaded as an application. Apparently the EFB has integration with it, but currently it's not connected. Should have checked that before. But there's a window of Navigraph open so that you can see our route, you can see what we're planning to do. Hopefully we get the same clearance from ATC, because otherwise we're going to have to make some changes while we're doing this. But that's the fun of the game, right? You get real life ATC, which means that they will make changes to your flight plan. They will tell you what you're trying to do is not smart. We got a better way. So we're actually, Will, you can press on the GPS arrow key, left top, a little bit to the right, there, yeah, a little bit lower. That one, yeah. If you click that one, it will connect to the sim.
You don't have a sim link running.
Oh, there's no sim link running. Okay, then it doesn't show you the aircraft live in the sim. But okay, we know where we are. We're at one of those gates. And what happened there?
Looks like we got disconnected from that.
Just go ahead and hit connect at the top left then.
Yeah, you can click connect on the top left. Maybe because your mic is open? Hopefully not.
No, it's not.
Okay,
so
what happened there is we got disconnected because a supervisor on the Vatsim network messaged and just said for some reason they needed a connection. They needed to talk to this pilot, and because they didn't respond in a timely manner, they just got disconnected from the network. There was no disciplinary action taken, but they did disconnect us, so all we have to do is reconnect and apparently take a gander at this guy here. There you go, yeah. So you have to use your Vatsim registered name and the login details right when we're connecting. So if you go into settings up at the top there, you'll be able to edit your information. in there for your full name there. Yeah.
I just have to enter my name, so now privacy be damned.
While they're doing that, Brandon, can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the differences between air traffic control in North America, especially in the United States, versus Europe? A lot of folks who are used to Europe will obviously know that you tend to get a runway in your initial clearance, and it's not as much of a guessing game, whereas here in the United States especially, you're often programming an airplane before you know your departure runway, or you're programming the arrival before you've been assigned a runway. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, so in the United States, there is a lot of traffic that comes in, and typically we have to wait for what the current conditions are at the time to be able to determine what flow we're assigning you. The airspace procedures, instrument procedures such as our departures and our standard arrivals may or may not be dynamic to handle different flows. So you might actually file for a westbound departure out of Houston and end up getting an eastbound one if weather is bad or if the winds have shifted. And then it gets the same thing when you get to your arrival airport. You might be expecting for your airport to be in south flow, but by the time you get there, it might be in north flow. And that may or may not require a change to your flight plan. And we do that so we can make sure that the flow is actually going in a timely manner. We want to do it in organized because the United States does handle a lot of traffic. So we tend to do the runways in the best way to get you out as quickly as possible. And sometimes that may result in a longer taxi, but the idea is to get everyone out as quickly possible. So, I don't have too much experience in the European airspace, so I can't really speak too much on that. But in the United States, there's a lot of dynamic changes that can happen during your flight. And if you guys ever have any trouble or have issues with that, it's better to say, I can't do that, I don't understand, than say Roger and fly something that you might not be prepared to do or not familiar with. An ATC, we're wanting to make sure that we can serve you best. And if you guys have an issue, let us know. Better to do that than leave us in the dark.
Yeah, I think we're ready to ask for clearance.
All right.
Fly-by-wire 32, Houston Tower, good to hear you. You are cleared to the Austin International Airport via Bandito 5 departure, manure transition, Willie 7 arrival. Climb via SID, departure frequency 120.05, squawk 24, tree 1. Fly-by-wire 32, read back correct. Push back your discretion, call for taxi, expect 15 left.
What's this for? Okay.
We just thought we'd give you a microphone so we can still hear your discussions with ATC. We'll hear this side of things as well, and then we'll get your guys' microphones back on. Thanks, guys.
1969, welcome to Houston. Exit left when able and safe parking.
So yeah, as you can hear, there's a lot of other traffic going on with ATC. So what we just did was ask for clearance, saying this is our flight plan. This is what we want to do. We want to reach Austin in the end. And where our call sign is fly-by-wire 32, because,
Houston Tower, November 241, get off the port short.
Always good to listen.
Let's go.
So that means that we're now cleared.
November 241, Juliet Alpha, wind 2405, fly runway heading, runway 15 left, clear for takeoff.
And so they give you back a whole bunch of information about what is the
Houston
next
Tower,
frequency.
November 241, Juliet Alpha, welcome to disconnect here.
It gets
Sorry
busy.
about that.
It gets really busy on
No worries.
on Vatsim. So the thing is, we kind of need to listen in at some point
Yeah,
because, of course, there's
where you
going to be
parking
call-outs to us. Now it's okay, but once we're in the air, there's going to be call-outs to us, like
Yeah, 'cause you can
avoid
see-
traffic or to vector
thank
us
you for
into
the
the right
welcome
direction or
and now
sequence us
waiting
into
for
landing.
the-
So at some point, we're going to be a little bit quiet
That's
because we're going to be
it.
listening into ATC and making sure that these guys can hear
Yeah,
whenever
1960,
fly-by-wire
correction
32 gets
1696,
called.
do you have a gate
So we
preference?
got that clearance, so we're programming the MCDU with a
No,
departure,
no,
but we're also
we-
programming right
I gave
now
for
with
nothing. Thanks.
ready an arrival because it's a very short
United
flight.
1696,
We're pretty sure that the
Northside
weather is
Terminal
not going to
Charlie,
change
taxi via
significantly, so we
November
can
Alpha,
start
November Juliet.
planning for that arrival.
Yeah, and you mentioned a really good point. When you're filing a flight plan and you're keying up on frequency, once you check in on the frequency, it's the pilot's responsibility to make sure that they're passively listening and monitoring that frequency, because you never know when ATC is going to call up fly-by-wire 32, and you don't want to, be asking for repeating every time. You want to try and keep on the headset and be paying attention, because it might be something very important, such as stop now. You might be crashing into a plane. Do you see the guy in front of you? So it's always very important to be listening when you're on the Vatsim network. But again, if you've got any questions, never be afraid to ask. I want to talk a little bit about the clearance, if you don't mind. So, on Vatsim, you may or may not be familiar with how an IFR clearance operates. And these gentlemen over here went and asked for their clearance, and the ATC, we always give it in a standard format. And the acronym for that is called CRAFT, C-R-A-F-T, and you'll get it in the same format every time. So it'll start off with something such as cleared to your destination airport via, and then it will say your route. So they may say a bit of your route and then as filed, or they might give you a reroute in that section. So it's very, very important to pay attention to that, because that's kind of the first area that changes might be made. After they've done discussing your route, then they will say the altitude of your initial altitude, which may or may not be climbed via the SID. And if that's the case, you need to go to your standard instrument departure that you filed in your flight plan, and it will tell you the climb instructions on that plate per each fix, or there might be a top altitude on the top of your page that tells you that is as high as you can go and you need to stop there. ATC can alter that by saying accept maintain, and then we'll sometimes give you your cruise if we have to amend that. So after we're done with the altitude, then we move on to departure frequency, and that's just so you know which departure frequency you're going to go to after tower, because typically you're able to look at charts, and you would be, in the real world, you'd be able to determine which tower frequency you may or may not be going to, but departure is not very well posted, so we need to make sure that you're ready to go and prepared for that, especially once you're airborne. A lot's happening when you're doing takeoff, so having that frequency pre-programmed in is a great step to get ahead of the airplane. And then finally, you're issued a transponder code, and that is how ATC is able to identify you through your beacon, because it does not just pop up your call sign when you actually enter into radar range. It will just say, 4032. In this case, it is 2431. So when they're airborne, that code would pop up, but since we issued that clearance, we would know that when the radar is seeing 2431, our computer radar screens will say fly-by-wire 32. So that's the whole clearance, all of craft. And then you have to repeat back anything that is important, any changes, definitely your transponder. And after that, ATC will reply with just some of those basic instructions, such as the current wind or the ATIS, any of your pushback instructions, and they will give you your estimated departure runway there or on the ground frequency. So it is a little bit tricky, but as long as you kind of know what to expect and be listening for and write down any information, I highly recommend, then you can get well on your way and understand that it's not too daunting.
Yeah, and so while all the great explanation came in, we're also looking at the pilots now setting up the final information about the aircraft for takeoff, but also arrival in this case, making sure that we have all the settings in place for a good arrival, so we know what the pressure is, what the temperature is, what the wind is. We notice now normally you would do this if you're about half an hour away from the destination airport. We're having a very short flight, so we're doing it on the ground already because we know this information, right? We can do that. We haven't looked at the charts yet, but we can look at that in a minute. I think the guys might be ready for pushback. So let's start doing the pushback. And then we don't need to ask clearance for that, because as you might remember, the controller stated pushback at discretion, contact ready for taxi, right? Which means you can push back whenever you want, just don't hit anything.
Or anyone.
Or anyone, hopefully. I did turn off live traffic, so you don't see the Vatsim live traffic, so we might actually hit somebody. No, we won't. Once we're ready for taxi, so once the engines are spooled up, we're powered on, we're in a good configuration, we tested our controls, then we can ask for taxi clearance to runway 15 left, I think was the case here. Yep. So this is the pushback system that we have in our sim ourselves or in the EFB, so it's part of our system. Again, if you have GSX Pro, it will work with that as well. I use that a lot of the time, it's really cool. So yeah, right now it's doing some final checks. You see the beautiful George Bush International Airport with some controllers standing by or some ground personnel looking at us and thinking, what the hell are you doing? Well, I have to admit why there's a baggage cart still there. I'm not entirely sure, you know, but that's the ground system there. And so at some point we're going to have to start turning. So I'm assuming he's going to use the rudder, or you can do that in the EFB itself once you're ready to kind of turn your plane towards your taxiways or the expected taxiways, which in this case are fairly simple. We deliberately took a gate close to the runway that we're going to make it easy on ourselves. I'm also very happy that the controllers in Houston are very friendly to us. So if we missed saying something, they seem to be very nice.
And Usman Tower, good morning. Steering wheel 1045. I head to New Orleans requesting clearance, please.
Fairwinds 1045, Houston Tower, good morning.
So yeah, we finished pushback, and so we're now going to start the engines, making sure all the values look correct, and we're ready to taxi
squawk
out to the runway.
2404.
I think Will is having some fun with the controls there. So we do have the throttle, so you will see that we're now put at the bottom the engine starter on ignition, and we're going to start engine 1 first, and we'll see at the ECAM pages that if the fuel pumps are on and everything is good, which I think they are, you'll see the numbers go up at the top and the bottom. But it is a little slow. Oh, there it goes. Yep. And at some point, it's going to say avail, which means available, and then you can jump to the second engine, power that on. On the A320, you can only power one engine at a time. You can't power both engines because there's just not enough bleed air from the APU coming in to be able to do all of that. So yeah, things are coming up. And in the meantime, as you can hear in the background, ATC is continuing vectoring people around in the world. The Tower of Houston is pretty busy at this time. That's a good thing. So yeah, engine 1 is still spooling up. You'd see about 18 to 20% at the top. That's when it should start saying available. And then yeah, the second engine can get started.
Can you speak to how you know whether an airport is uncontrolled for pushback or whether we should be speaking with a controller to push?
Yeah, actually, I want you to answer that from the pilot side.
Oh, God. I'm not an expert. Well, basically, actually, I just don't really know the answer. Brandon, go ahead.
That's okay, yeah. So in the vPilot client, you would actually see that there was a IAH tower online. The vPilot client will show you all available controlling positions near you. So you can, that's step one, is you might be able to tell, oh, that looks like my airport, I should probably look for who to connect. There's also multiple online websites out there that shows live maps of the Vatsim network, including one on the Vatsim website. It's just map.vatsim.net, and it will show all the pilots. It's very similar to Flight Aware. We call it SimAware. So you're able to go on and see which controlling client positions are online, where all the other pilots are. And there are other things such as Vatastic, which is another booth here that do great work for maps and other clients as well. So pretty easy for you to figure out. And if it seems like you might be under this guy's control, but you're just not sure, you can send them a PM or you can contact them on frequency, and they'll surely let you know if you're supposed to be there or not and send you in the right direction.
And you know, it is a bit of a guessing game in real life too, particularly in the US. I know we got a question, we can take that in a sec. Just interesting for people to know, you know, you're not alone on Vatsim when you're going, gee, am I speaking with the right person? Airports that airline pilots go to in real life all have different procedures, especially here in the United States. Sometimes you're calling to push, sometimes you're not. So it is a little bit of a guessing game in real life. And as always, if you're not sure, just ask. And you're never going to get anyone yelling at you for double checking whether you're cleared to do something or not. We're still waiting for the engines to start, right, guys?
I think we're good to go.
Okay, if we're good to go, then we'll save more questions for the end. So go ahead and ask for the taxi.
Yeah. Please.
Flyby 32 is ready for taxi.
Fly-by-wire 32, runway 15 left, taxi via November Charlie, November Echo, Whiskey Whiskey.
Taxi 15 left via November Charlie, November Echo, fly-by-wire 32.
Air Force 2, Houston Tower, good morning. Wind 240 at 5, runway 26 left, clear to land.
Clear to land, runway 26 left, Air Force 2.
So we just got our taxi clearance, and as you heard, they give us some taxiways. I already forgot which ones they were. 15 left is in the other side, on the left side. That's there, the first one. So yeah, they're looking at the chart, which is something that real aircraft pilot would also have, right? They have Jepson charts or something like that, a professional service. This is Navigraph, which is a little bit more affordable for our simmers. And so that shows you the taxiways to follow. It shows you where they are, so you can kind of map out where you need to go and if you wanted to make a turn at certain areas. So now we're making clear that cabin be ready for takeoff or for taxi. Make sure that the cabin is ready. You see on the ECAM that there's a couple of places that you need to hold the button for a while for the TO test, I think. Oh, you got it, cool. So yeah, there's a whole bunch that the Airbus expects you to do, right? It gives you messages of you need to check this and this and this and this before you're going to take off. The system is smart enough that this is your pushback. The system is smart enough to know you just entered a new flight plan, so that means you're going to take off. So I'm going to give you a takeoff checklist in the ECAM. As you can see in the right bottom corner at the moment, but it's okay, I'll let the guys fly and taxi. And it will show you in blue things that you might have missed. So for instance, we have our flaps set already, we have the spoiler brakes armed, so the automatic braking is armed. We have our auto brake for the wheels on as well, and well, the cabin check has been done.
1019 radio check.
That was not for us.
United 1019, Eastern Tower, H5x5.
So hopefully we're not making the wrong turns, because then, again,
Los Angeles,
our controls are going to be unhappy, and Brandon's going to kick us from the network.
19, clear to the Los Angeles airport via Bandito.
So we're testing the brakes while we're taxiing to make sure that those are also working. And we're quickly checking if turning left here is probably the right one to do. But we can't go straight anymore, so we got to turn left.
Thanks, United 1019, cleared.
And so from this point on, we're probably going to be a little bit quieter in terms of commentary, because at this point, it's really important for the pilots to hear if somebody tells us something to do, right? So it's nice, and we'll jump in from time to time, don't worry. At some point, there will be, oh, actually, they're already on tower frequency, so tower will tell them that they can line up on the runway.
Call for taxi 15 left, United 1019.
It's a beautiful day.
Houston Tower, United 2161 Heavy, with you, runway 27.
United 2161 Heavy, Houston Tower, did you say 27?
Affirm, 27.
United 2161, wind 240.5, runway 27, clear to land.
27 clear to land, United 21.
So the nice thing about these airports is they have all the markers to see where you're going. If you need to go, like you have all the names on there, so you can see there is an NE on the sign. That means this is one of the taxiways that we need to take, so it knows if you want to go to NE, you have to go left here. So it's keeping track of all of that for you in the airport itself. So you kind of have the whole directions just as you have with driving your car, just a little bit bigger.
Can you speak to the importance of having charts and basically, especially for a big airport like this, when you're trying to taxi around in the simulator, a lot of taxiways, a lot of letters, it's difficult to manage when you're by yourself. So just speak to the fact that we've got charts, and that's an important piece to the component here.
Absolutely. So yes, as highlighted, charts are a fundamental when you're flying on something like Vatsim. Charts are things that tell you exactly what the procedures are at certain airport, what are the taxiways you might be able to use, especially if you start flying larger aircraft like the 747, there's taxiways that can be used with that big of an aircraft, right? So you need to be aware of that. Charts all have this. So this is a taxi chart that we're now showing. The guys are still looking a little bit where to go. And so those charts help you. There are also charts for departures that we have, and then there's also charts for arrivals. There's charts for landing, approaches. They will tell you everything. Like a chart for approach will tell you the minimum altitude that you make a decision to continue or not, and there's a whole set of rules why you wouldn't continue. There's a landing chart also has like a frequency if it's an ILS that you need to tune. If it's an RNAV, or most of the charts will have a flight path angle, like the expected angle you will go towards the runway when descending. If you have an approach chart, it will be containing minimum and maximum altitudes for waypoints, all of that. Yeah, the amount of information is massive, but there's a lot of...
Wind 240 at 5, RNAV to scam, runway 15 left, clear for takeoff.
That was for us, clear for takeoff.
Clear for takeoff, 15 left, fly by wire 32.
Yeah, that's the sound of the laptop. We're going to hope and try and turn that up a little bit, but it's a balance between the mics and the audio of the stream as well. So yes, we're clear. So now we're going to line up, and we're actually clear for takeoff, so we don't really have to wait. We can just go, and then we'll see how our pilots do in the air. I'm a little bit concerned. The aircraft is awesome.
Charlie 1, tech to be in November.
The aircraft does everything.
And one thing you'll notice in that takeoff clearance is that they did issue a RNAV 2 waypoint, basically clearing our pilots to not only take off, but then immediately turn, once they're following the procedure, the departure procedure, onto that first RNAV waypoint. So very important for pilots to remember that you don't just take off and keep flying runway heading. The instruction has been issued to make that turn. In this case, it'll be a right turn out to our first waypoint.
So that's kind of like that last check when you're on the runway to go, my navigation's working, I'm going to turn in the correct direction. We had a question about that was basically, what do I do if that's not correct? The answer is don't take off, stop, and figure out what's going on, because that's a pretty important thing that we're double checking on here.
Correct.
So look at that, we're airborne. The nice thing with the Airbus is it gives you all the information you need. There's clearly, if you have a look at the PFD and later on online, zoom into it, you will see lines that are the flight director, which tells you it's basically an axis. It says your point needs to be in the middle of that axis, and it will move around if you need to turn. It will go up and down if you need to push, like pitch down or up with the aircraft. So it's a lot easier. And now we have armed the autopilot to the...
Pushback your discretion, call for taxi, expect 15 left.
I think at some point there's going to be a departure, so we should shut up.
Fly by wire 32, contact departure 120.05. Have a great flight.
120.05, fly by wire 32, thanks.
So that's a handoff. Brandon, maybe you want to talk about handoffs?
City Airport, ticket departure, delay transition to the side. I'll maintain 5,000.
I'll let them talk first.
Is with me, squawk 6760.
Right, we're clear to Oklahoma City via the ticket departure transition that is filed. We'll keep it at 5,000 and squawking 6.
You should check in with departure.
Southwest 2699.
Southwest 699, reback correct information, Delta's correct.
Houston departure, fly by wire 32 is out of Houston, climbing via Vinto 5.
Fly by wire 32, departure ready contact.
All right.
Cool.
So with that, he gave the clearance. He said, welcome to my frequency, basically. He said, fly by wire 32. Roger. And the important thing to note about this handoff was that you noticed that it wasn't immediate right away, right? There were other people who were talking. The pilots did a great job of making sure to not talk over somebody on frequency, allowing a little bit of time before they called up. And that's perfectly okay. If you think that you have to check in with us right away, you don't, right? As soon as you can, but no need to talk over anybody else. We want to hear everybody. And sometimes you'll hear kind of a squelch, or you might not hear other people or hear other people getting stepped on. And we're just trying to keep everything in an organized manner. So don't feel like you have to step on somebody, because they were able to make that turn and continue on their way. No worries. So
Our pilots decided to go for a little challenge. The autopilot refuses to turn on. There must be something configured wrong. That's very interesting. ECAMs are not showing anything. Oh, it's something, yeah, we probably were a little bit off course or something, yeah. It's figuring it out.
There we go.
Take any questions?
Sure, we can take a question at the moment.
Okay.
So, how is weather coordinated? Is this flying in real weather across the Vatsim network, or is there some standard thing that sets it up? Because everybody's got to be the same thing.
You know, the weather is actually the pilot's decision. That in your simulator you can fly technically on what weather conditions you like. We highly suggest that you use real-time weather because it's able to help us out and identify, you know, the weather you received right there is going to be real-time weather. So if we're running off of that, it's a very thunderstorm day, and you're working on basically instrument procedures the old time, and we get a VFR, you know, Cessna 172, we'll absolutely work you in, but you know, it'll be better for the whole operation, and honestly, you know, more realistic if you're going through with real weather. Ultimately, it's your decision. It's not something that is forced through the Vatsim network, but the controllers will operate under real weather unless you're telling us otherwise that you're going VFR anyway.
Like a transition for a runway off the arrival?
Yeah. It's a good question.
Runway 26 left.
Let's
You open on the iPad and you open the Vatsim and flight, you're flying, can you connect those two through Bluetooth, or how do you manage all the systems?
So right now, the fly-by-wire aircraft does not support a remote electronic flyback yet. It is something that we have in our roadmap to provide. We have it available for the MCDU. So you can load the MCDU on an iPad, put it next to you, and kind of use it as an actual device, or any tablet or other computer, so remotely in a browser. I'm going to let them fly a little bit to see, because at some point it's probably going to be a call out for altitude or something.
A hand off the center, yes. Yeah.
Or a hand off the center as well, yeah. They can actually prepare the frequency for that using the fancy EFB. They can set it as standby so that they just have to press the button.
I'll ask you a quick question. This happens to all of us. You know, we kind of started a little bit there where you're getting a little bit off course, the airplane's getting away from you. That happens in Flight Sim, that happens in real life. So what would you recommend? You know, this is a bit of a different case than the normal flight, but if you're at home, you're on Vatsim, and something's going wrong with your airplane, how do you recommend handling that with respect to air traffic control?
Yeah, honestly, just as much as you can communicate with us as possible. I have absolutely no idea, looking at my scope, what's going on here. You know, there's a ton of different scenarios that I could imagine in my head, but it's not going to be the one that you're seeing. So if it's just a quick radio call, say fly-by-wire 32, we're having trouble with the autopilot, give us just 1 minute, we'll have it fixed. I'll know, okay, you're working on it, I don't need to really worry. Let me make extra sure that there's no one going to conflict with you right now. And then it goes so heavy as to say our autopilot has failed, we're going to need vectors all the way to Austin, then I know that I need to do something different and begin to prepare for that. So as much information as you can give ATC when problems go wrong without being too verbose throughout the entire radio call, that's going to help me best get you to where you need to go in the most timely manner without ensuring the whole operation is still smoothly operating safely.
Yeah, and it's really the same thing in real life, right? If a pilot notices something wrong, they will tell ATC, we have this problem or this is going on, give us maybe 10 minutes or 5 minutes to go through our checklist, emergency checklists, and then come back and ask you for whatever we need. And they might be able to fix it and then tell ATC everything's good, and then ATC will come back, continue on route. Or they will say we need vectors back to the airport, and ATC will start turning them around.
We'll expect a handoff to Houston Center here momentarily, unless I missed that.
It hasn't happened yet, or at least they haven't done it yet.
Very good, very good.
While we're waiting for that, maybe, Will, you can show or load the approach chart in the Navigraph window that we have. Just to show you, it's at the bottom, you can see the different configured approaches.
Would you mind if we look at the departure?
Oh yeah, sure, go ahead and look at the departure chart. Yeah.
Sorry guys, don't mean to add to your workload over there.
R32, contact Houston Center 134.42, see you.
That's for us.
Yep.
134.425 for fly-by-wire 32.
Alright, clear to land.
Close that runway 226 for you.
Houston Center, fly-by-wire 32 is 16,000.
Fly-by-wire 32, Houston Center, hello. Good ex altimeter 29908.
29908. flyby 32.
Yeah, basically this is handoffs where every so often you will change airspace. And of course, during departure, you're changing from a ground to tower to your departure frequency and departure people, and then control. And then you go to your center control. And then at some point, in this case, it won't happen because it's a short flight. But if you have a longer flight, you'll be switching center to center to center as your route continues, because different people in different areas are responsible for their own area, right? And at some point, we will also be told to descend, and we'll be handoff to approach if it's online, and then to tower again for landing, and potentially to ground for taxiing. I think in this case, it's just going to be Houston Center the whole way from now. Like that.
Yeah, and there are some scenarios where there might be multiple centers online, where for even inside Houston airspace, where you might get internal handoffs. So it's always important to pay attention, and if you miss a radio call or you think it was, you can always just say, fly-by-wire 32, say again, was that for me? You know, we'll repeat it. We don't want you to miss instructions. Now, for maybe you're coming into Houston and the Houston Center is online and you weren't previously under control, and there could be one or two Houston centers. You know, what do you do then? The answer is call up one of them, and they'll get you radar contact. They'll get a hold of you, and then if they need to switch you to the other one, they'll do that. They'll just issue you a handoff to go to the other Houston Center or whatnot. So, don't worry about it. Don't be too stressed out. The ATC will get you where you need to go. As long as you're looking and you're saying, I'm going to get into this this one center, they'll take care of you. So,
yeah.
Do you have internet interruption? What is the recommended procedure to engage?
yes. So if the question is what happened if your internet drops, and that's a great thing because it happens a lot. In fact. We hosted a Houston Live controlling event here a couple days ago, and our internet dropped for all the controllers. So what we do is we just get on as soon as we can, right back, get everything set up and going. And in the case of a pilot, you're just reconnecting. You'll call back in and say, fly-by-wire 32 back with you after an internet disruption. So we know you're back, and if we have to re-identify you or anything, we'll take care of that. But what's hard for me to do as a controller is know when a pilot has actually disconnected and then reconnected again. So if you do disconnect, make sure to say something, I'm back, because I'll see on my radar scope that you dropped, but when you come back, I won't know if you're actually on my frequency or not, because maybe you're SIM connected, but the audio isn't working and stuff like that. So just a quick check-in is all you need. Yeah, absolutely. Great question.
So what the pilot is doing right now is configuring the aircraft for arrival. So it's asking for the ATIS information for Austin. It's starting to configure all the configurations that you need for arrival, so that the MCDU knows about winds, or the FMS knows about winds, and the FMS knows about minimums. So that's something that will show on the chart eventually. So yeah, those things will come in at some point once we have the message in. But the nice thing is with the EFB, we also have that information in the EFB, and that refreshes on a regular basis. So we see that the wind in this case is 190 degrees at 6 knots. So we can just enter 190/06. I love it when my pilots do what I ask them to do.
And again, I'll just point out, get that question in the front, but this is a great reminder of as you get to cruise and you've got time, now is when you're doing your approach preparation. So we're grabbing the ATIS, we're figuring out what runway we might land on. In Europe, oftentimes the stars are connected to a runway. So if you're flying in Europe, you quite often know this is my runway. Not in the United States. We love to keep our pilots guessing here. And so sometimes you'll look at the ATIS and it'll say, well, we're landing both runways. I think it's the 17s in Austin. So you just have to guess. Is it going to be 17 left or 17 right? You make your best educated guess from experience or from where you're parking, what side of the airport you're coming in on. And sometimes you get there and they say, you know what, it's the other runway. Then you change it up. But getting all this preparation done now while we have time is a much better way to do it than when you're descending through 10,000 feet trying to set the airplane up. We had a question up front there.
Yes. I was watching the Vatsim folks yesterday, and they did a lot more typing of text.
Southwest 2916, turn right heading 360, runway 22, cleared for takeoff.
So there is a bit, the question is that he noticed a lot of ATC yesterday in our war room. typing to pilots and in our controlling clients, and it's a mix of both. We're inputting in information into our system. When we say climb maintain 16,000.
I'm going to interrupt you. You might check because there was a message for you, and please say go again for fly-by-wire.
32 Houston Center.
Yeah, they're checking for you.
Fly-by-wire 32.
Fly-by-wire 32, descend via the Willie 7 arrival, Austin landing south, Austin altimeter 299.5.
Descend via the Willie 7 arrival and 299.5, fly-by-wire 32.
All right, sorry to talk over ATC, but
yeah, this is important, right? And this happens all the time. Is that you need to pay attention, and this is a fairly simple airspace, as in there's not a lot of people flying on a Sunday morning at 10 a.m.
Yes.
But if it gets like an event that they have, it gets crazy.
Yes. So we do have the ability to actually have text-only pilots. So if you're not connected via voice. If you don't have a microphone, but you do have speakers, it's called receive. So ATC will be able to talk to you, but you would type back in the vPilot command there, so you could type back. You could also be completely text only if you don't have a microphone and speakers, and we'll do everything via text.
Is that in real life or is that Vatsim?
That is in Vatsim. Real life is adding.
I'm not sure whether there was a call out for fly-by-wire 32. You can make me have it.
4900. Are you parking East Cargo ramp?
We are going to the East Cargo ramp, sir, yes.
Yeah, you keep me honest, okay?
Yeah, for sure. I'm just
32, contact Austin approach, 119.0.
119.0, fly-by-wire 32.
So there is approach online, which is awesome.
Great.
FedEx 4900, can you still make that right turn onto November there?
Yeah. Yep.
And Austin approach, fly-by-wire 32 is descending via the Willie 7 arrival.
Fly-by-wire 32, Austin approach, low information, I could current advising you that I could expect runway 18 left.
Expect 18 left, fly-by-wire 32.
Yeah, so I'll keep this brief. I don't want to talk over them anymore. This is when it gets exciting. But what you heard from center was a descend via clearance to descend via the published altitudes on your standard arrival. And they issued that Austin was landing south. So you as a pilot didn't know which runway was if you were going to use. It's either 18 left or 18 right, but you knew that your approach or your arrival procedure had a south transition. So you know which route to take now. And then they issued the altimeter since you're going to descend below 180. So when he just checked on to approach, the first approach frequency you talk to will typically assign you your runway and will give you the necessary information as well. So that's when you're really ready to go. Right when you get into approach, you pretty much know where you're going. Now they can go in and program anything in the FMS that they didn't already. I think they programmed it correctly and got 18 left. And now they'll be listening into ATC more intensely as they begin to continue their descent via the arrival and then get eventually set up for the ILS 18 left.
Yeah, exactly. You see the pilots going through the motions of checking all the configurations. Are we ready for landings? Like, for instance, one of the things they did was the auto brake, which is important when you're landing, that the aircraft can brake itself to a certain extent. You don't have to manually control it. All of those are checklists that exist for real pilots, and those checklists can be found on our website as well, for instance, and on the internet with other aircraft have like all standard operating procedures available that will explain what are the steps to take when you're in your approach phase, what are the steps to take in your departure phase or your takeoff phase, and so on and so forth. So the other thing that we could check, oh yeah, actually this is a good thing. So we have TCAS available for those that are not aware of what TCAS is. It's the traffic alert system and reaction system if it's automated or enabled, which means it will monitor the environment or monitor the aircraft in the vicinity. And if you're coming into a dangerous situation where the separation is not enough, it will raise a warning first. If it's enabled, it will also take evasive action, which could typically be descending or increasing the altitude.
As you can see, the pilots are running through their own checklists right now to begin preparing for landing and approach. So,
yeah. And they can even check the radio nav page if you will, so we can show automatically that, I meant on the MCDU radio nav. That will show you now that there should be an ILS frequency configured that's automatic. So if you configure an arrival in the MCDU in the Airbus, it will know about the frequencies of the ILS approach. And once you get into, I think, about 250 nautical miles, it will start automatically programming it in for you. So now it becomes easier. You don't have to manually do a lot of stuff. You can always change it. Like if ATC comes back and says, well, we're going to change you to another runway because there was an accident, hopefully not. But then you can change that.
Yeah, and one of the most important things that you as pilots can do when you're looking at, once you're assigned your instrument approach procedure or any approach, that you're able to look at that chart and start briefing it and looking at the pertinent information, preparing your aircraft and your mind for it. This is a practice we do real world as well to make sure that we're staying ahead of the airplane. We always want to be the one in control because when the airplane starts flying things can get bad very quickly. So we want to make sure that we're always thinking forward ahead, and one of those steps is ensuring that our instrument approach frequency is correctly configured if we're running an ILS in.
So actually what we're doing now is we realized that we're set up for 18 right, and because ATC gave us 18 left, we have to adjust our arrival. Luckily, it's still within the same approach, and we don't have to worry about the star changing and stuff like that, because that would have complicated things a bit, but this is actually good practice, right? We thought it was going to be something. ATC was like, no, we got a better idea for you. We're doing 18 left. And so the aircraft automatically reconfigures itself. It'll update that ILS frequency, and so on and so forth. Yeah, I think we're kind of waiting now for vectoring from ATC at some point. I think it's good to know at this moment to also notice that in the flight plan, as you can see on the navigation display that the pilot is showing, there is a line straight out of the, I'm trying to see, is it BISO? Yeah, waypoint. That is a straight line, and it doesn't connect to the line coming from the runway. That is called a discontinuity, which is very common in the US. In Europe, a little less, but in the US, a lot of airspace around airports require careful control. And so discontinuity is there for ATC to have the time or the capabilities of telling you what they want you to do. If it's not busy, they will just vector you very quickly towards the final approach. But if it's a very busy airport, they use that to sequence the airplanes in a safe way for landing on the runway, because not everybody can land at the same time, and so it's used for sequencing, really.
Brandon, a question from Michael online. How do you handle in-flight emergencies on Vatsim?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll see this every so often when I'm controlling. Vatsim has rules in place to protect both the pilots and the controllers, and it basically runs down to the controller has discretion over whether they can accept the emergency or not. So I try to warrant and take any emergencies that happen. But if it's busy, due to our nature that we are top-down and we're not like the FAA where we have all those different, it can get very busy. My head is on a swivel looking at many different things, and sometimes it's just not possible for the Vatsim controllers to handle the emergency at the time. And if that's the case and we don't handle the emergency, we would say something such as, we're unable to do it at this time. Please either discontinue your emergency or disconnect from the network. Basically saying that if you want to fly your emergency and we can't handle it, you either have to solve it or just disconnect from the network and continue to the ground on offline. So we try to be accommodating as much as possible, but again, with us in the top-down nature, we can't always do it. And you brought up a great point about that line for the discontinuity, where you have instructions on the approach plate, which this one, I'm going to take a gander, might be like heading 354 and 6,000, I think. I'm going to really test my knowledge on that one. So you'll just maintain that until ATC gives you further instructions. You don't have to turn direct the airport. And we as controllers rely on that sometimes just to make sure, because I might have 2 people on final on 18 left, and I need that extra room. I might start giving you other instructions. And the other thing to remember is if it's not a busy day, I might issue a earlier descent than what's published on the chart as well to get you in quicker. So it's just very important that the closer you get to the airport, the more you pay attention, because sometimes we'll begin to alter the procedures and give you vectors to get you in as quickly as possible, and then also in sequence with other aircraft.
Yeah, I'm expecting ATC to come in soon to kind of vector us, say what the intentions are, what they want us to do at this discontinuity. They typically will do that even in a slow airspace or a low activity airspace. They will do this before you even hit the waypoint. And so we'll see if they'll let us fly straight for a while.
Yep. So basically at this point, it will, once we cross over this fix, we'll be flying on that heading at 4,000 until ATC tells us to move.
The check for the safety of Vatsim is still online.
Oh. 2,500.
Say again, I would say.
Say again for Flight 32.
Flight 32, descend to maintain 2,500.
Descend to maintain 2,500, Flight 32.
This is a common thing we see on Vatsim as well, that importance of flying this heading, discontinuity, vector segment, whatever it may be called in your airplane. It's tempting to just close those points off in the FMS and just start making a left turn on your own. But of course, if you do that, you'll be in the way of other traffic. So they're doing the exact right thing by continuing straight ahead on this heading, as opposed to trying to, tie everything together in the FMS and unintentionally making a turn. We're waiting for air traffic control to give us a turn. So this is a very common thing that you'll see, and it's important to be following what would be on the chart that just says continue trucking straight on ahead until you hear from air traffic control.
So one thing that I didn't really talk about, because a lot was happening in a short period, is that we saw the managed descent mode of the Airbus in action here, which means that it takes into account that whole approach and any restrictions during the approach, right? So there's
32, turn left, heading 200, intercept runway 18 left localizer.
Heading 200 and intercept 18 left localizer, Flight 32.
So now we're gonna go on a heading setting. So ATC is turning us left, so they are telling us, you're ready for the approach to the airport. Please turn to whatever it was, I can't remember.
200, yes.
See, I'm really bad as a pilot. And so they tell us also to intercept the ILS approach. So that means that on this heading, we should be able to, probably about in a 30-degree angle, hit the ILS vector. And an ILS is an automatic landing system. I forgot what it really stands for. Instrument landing system, right? Exactly. And so it sends out beacons that will vertically and laterally guide an airplane onto the runway. In this case, I think Austin supports Cat 3, which is the highest category, or Cat 3B is the highest, but is the highest category, which means that you can even do an auto land in the Airbus, because it supports full auto land. So you don't trust your controls, you let the autopilot do its thing, it will follow the ILS right into the runway, land on its own, and then you probably best take some control at some point, because otherwise you're going to run off the runway. But it's pretty interesting to see that. Of course, pilots in real life will only use that in very, very bad visibility.
Flight 32, 3 miles from scaling, maintain 2,500 until established on a localized crude ILS runway 18 left approach.
You're cleared for the approach.
Maintain 2,500, clear ILS.
2,500 and clear for the ILS approach, Flight 32.
So yeah, they're telling us stay at 2,500 feet, wait until you are capturing that localizer and capturing the vertical guidance as well, so the glide slope, and then you can follow the glide slope into the airport because you're cleared to land.
Yeah, very important part to mention there is to maintain that altitude until established, because us as air traffic controllers, we have a minimum vectoring altitude and also minimum safe altitudes that we see on our scope, and it's possible that if you begin descending right now, before you're established, that you would actually pop through one of those, and then we have to cancel your approach, circle you back around, and no one likes delays. So we want to make sure that you're flying at 2,500 all the way until you're established. So whenever you consider you're established, you start that turn. At that point, you can then maintain 2,500 until the localizer is established, and you start descending. Or if you're flying a different approach that has the specific altitudes on it per fix, then you can begin navigating down that way.
Yeah.
So super important there. You'll notice that the heading was issued all the way left to 200. And you can commonly expect a 30-degree intercept from ATC when you are flying an ILS.
2125, climbing through 2,900.
No, it's not for
Nope.
us.
That was 2125, Austin departure ready contact, clear direct hook, climb and maintain 12,000. Direct hook, climb and maintain 12,000, Southwest 2125.
So I think we should probably start doing our flaps a little bit. I don't know exactly what they're... Actually, I should let the pilots fly. But I'm looking at that ECAM, and I love seeing the blue.
As you can see, the ILS is starting to be captured as that pink diamond begins to move towards the center. And once it's right in the center, that will be considered established. And our pilots will begin flying the ILS approach.
And you also see that purple diamond at the vertical or the altitude indicator. That is still very high up because we're very low compared to the glide slope, but we'll start capturing that. So it's coming down, and once it hits our altitude, we will start following that diamond down to the ground. So we did move flaps now to flaps 2, and soon we'll be moving to flaps 3 and then flaps full, which is the approach setting for most airport. A lot of airlines out there still land on flaps 3 in a lot of cases because it saves a little bit of fuel, and if there's enough runway and there's not enough, or there's not a lot of aircraft in the vicinity and you don't need to vacate the runway very quickly, aircraft and the airports and ATC allow you to do a flaps 3 approach. It's a little bit faster, but it saves a bit of fuel. So
And,
a little bit of tidbit.
As you can see, today is a clear day, so you can see the Austin airport and our runway out the window right now. And typically, if you opt to try and get the visual instead, you can always let ATC know, and we can try and clear you onto the visual instead of the ILS. But you can also imagine right now that we're in thick clouds and you can't see.
R32, contact Austin Tower 118.22, see you.
118.22, flyby 32, see you.
Southwest 2125, contact Houston Center 134.42. Yeah, I'm going to clear the shot, sir.
Flyby 32 is on final, or we 18 left.
I think we know. I think I figured out what turns off the autopilot.
Possible Whiskey 32, runway 18 left, wind 220 at 09, custom 15, clear line.
Clear to land 18 left, flyby 32.
So we configured a push to talk button for Vatsim, and I think it's a button that's also bound to disconnect autopilot.
624, taxi 18 left, with echo.
Something has to go wrong in.
You thought this would be easy?
6624, runway 15 left, taxi, sorry, correction, 18 left, taxi via Golf 3, Golf Bravo.
So yeah, we're fully set up for landing.
Golf 3, Golf.
We got the landing gear down. We got flaps up, down all the way. We got our cabin checked. We had a speed brake armed. So we're basically coming in on the ILS now, and as you can see, the aircraft is trying to follow those diamonds down, the ILS signals down, and it will, depending on whether our pilot is brave enough to do a live landing or we want to show off the auto land, which it's nice to show off the auto land, right?
There you go. Yeah. Now, something I think I heard in the speakers there was a takeoff clearance for an aircraft on runway 18 left. So as a pilot, when you're on final, such as these guys, that's something extra for them to consider and look for now. Now that you're on an ILS approach, typically us as controllers, we're making sure that we're getting people off in time, but you are the pilot, you are final pilot in command, and if you don't like how something works, go around, follow your procedures, and then let us know. It's important to follow, aviate, navigate, and communicate, and in that order. Fly your plane, navigate where you need to go, and then communicate. So.
There's a bit of wind, as you might see. There's a bit of turbulence. The autoland is coming in. You don't see the aircraft that Brandon was talking about because I did disable live traffic in the sim.
Tower, Delta 1056, custom taxi, active the information echo.
Because for performance reasons, I wanted to make sure that the flight was smooth and the more objects wheeled in.
November Alpha Lima, clear to Bush Airport via radar vectors. Bush then as filed. On departure, climb maintain 3,000, expect 4,000, 10 minutes after departure. Departure is Wheel Austin approach, 119.0, squawk 4601.
So So we're now on the ground. It was a full auto land. You might have noticed, I didn't want to talk over ATC, but you might have noticed that...
Lima, say it again, please.
November Alpha Alpha Lima, you are cleared to Bush Airport via radar vectors, Bush, then as filed. On departure, climb maintain 3,000, expect 4,000, 10 after departure. Departure is with Austin approach, 119.0, squawk 4601.
So yeah, you might have noticed on the PFD
Delta 1256 runway
that there was a mention of auto land and then flare. So it did everything for you, basically. So the aircraft can do that. We have implemented this. Of course, again, in a clear day like this, a real pilot would disconnect the autopilot at least 500 feet above the ground or even 1,000 feet above the ground, if not more, because they like to fly the plane themselves a little bit.
Fly by 3232, welcome to Austin. Where do you want to park, sir?
Continue off the taxiway or off the runway and just call out that you're cleared of active.
Cleared of the active, flyby 32.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Repeat.
Can you repeat that for flyby 32?
Yeah, where do you want to park?
Where do you want to park?
Just anywhere.
Anywhere, flyby 32.
Yeah, straight ahead. That's all right.
We can go straight ahead.
Cool, no worries. Have a good day.
Have a good day. So thank them for their service. Yeah. You know, gotta thank your controllers. So yeah, we can kind of end the flight here. I think. Let's put the audio from the computer down, and we can start disconnecting from the network. I think we've shown what Vatsim can do. If you're interested, there's one more video that I always like to show for showcasing our new activity that we're doing. But don't worry, there's no sound, so the sound engineer doesn't have to worry too much. If that's okay, we can switch to one of the videos that we have, so VLC, and then do play.
And we know that the presentation is technically over now, but I'll be sticking around at the end. Would love to talk to you guys and answer any questions you have about Vatsim or flying on a virtual network.
Quickly wanted to show off a little bit of the new project we're working on is the A380 for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Just as the A320, we're going to make this free available for everyone. It's open source. This is a video where we just cranked up the turbulence significantly to kind of showcase the engine wobble that we have put into place, the wing flexing that we have put into place, the stabilizer, if it shows up at some point. It's really a lot of work, but it's really cool to see the progression of this aircraft coming along. And if you want to see more of that, there's a booth that we have. And of course, if there's something more that you want to know about Vatsim, they have a massively cool control room upstairs. Definitely go and visit it. It's really cool to see.